Welcome to the Your Ateh podcast, where you'll experience the unfiltered and inspiring world of impact-driven women business owners. I'm your host, Mary Grace Iniguez, a female multi-passionate entrepreneur and the owner of Social Register Network, and I'm on a mission to ignite the power within you. Here at the Your Ateh podcast, we're all about sharing authentic stories, both the triumphs and the challenges, because it's through our life experiences that we can truly impact others. I believe that by opening up and embracing vulnerability, we can empower ourselves and those around us. So grab your headphones and let's celebrate the resilience, passion, and the determination of each impact-driven women business owner. Remember, your story is the spark that can light up the world. Let's make an impact and ignite the power within you. Before we dive into today's podcast episode, I want to offer a gentle reminder that the content we'll be discussing may be sensitive and emotionally challenging for some listeners. This episode contains discussions about sensitive topics, including molestation and domestic violence. If you feel that this topic may be triggering for you, or if you're not in this space at this time, I encourage you to prioritize your well-being and consider listening to this episode when you feel ready. Additionally, I always want to remind you that it's okay to pause, take breaks, or skip ahead if you need to during this episode. Your emotional health and comfort is very important to me. If you are currently navigating your own, please know that you are not alone and there are resources and support networks available to you. We'll include some of those resources in the episode description for your reference. Thank you for joining us on this journey of empathy, understanding, and healing. Let's proceed with kindness and compassion for ourselves, but also for each other. Hello. Welcome back to the Your Ateh podcast. I'm your host, Mary Grace Iniguez, and I have a very special guest today, Miss Britney Miranda. And she actually owns her own business. She does all kinds of things. And that's why I'm going to let her tell you more about her business. But what I can say personally, she's an amazing operations person. She creates project management systems using specific softwares, also does amazing customer service, marketing, and all the things. And so I'm just super happy to have her in my circle. But without further ado, please help me welcome Britney. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. And yes, thank you, Mary Grace. My business is all about operations, making things make sense. I help a lot of startup companies. So we do a lot of, hey, what are we doing in this area? What are we doing in this area? We kind of just make it all make sense. And then I do also my dash of sprinkle there with the marketing. So yes, I love it. I've been doing it for a year on my own, but it is a talent that I have been building at least for the last 10 years.
Yeah, I think you help us with that, right? With the operations and the back system. And you are just so knowledgeable because I'll say, well, I'm doing this. And you're like, okay, well, let me check. And you're like, you know what? Actually, we can link these two things together and then you don't have to manually do it. And I'm like, oh my God, yes, please. Because I no longer want to manually do it. Britney has the answers. So I always say, like anyone I bring on this podcast, is truly get to know them and see how they can become a resource to you and how you can be a resource to them, because you just never know how they can help you in your life and your business. All right, Britney, we're going to get on to it. Okay. I am dealing with some allergies, so don't mind me if I scratch my nose. Britney and I were just having a laugh attack about me scratching my nose. But I want to dive into your story because as a woman in business, we all have, we all come from walks of life. And I think that women, especially, we tend to see the exterior of what's going on in someone's business, especially women and our peers. And we're like, oh my gosh, she got it all together. She's killing it in business. But actually, we forget to see and acknowledge that there's a story behind it and that we're all human and we're all going through the same thing. And so that's why this Your Ateh podcast was created. It was created for women in business to share their story and to impact another woman, to ensure that they know that they're not alone in this. And so today, Britney, you become an Ateh to another woman because you're teaching them from your life experience, from your life story. You're impacting them in some kind of way. So we're going to dive into your story. Tell us a little bit more about you, wherever you want to start.
Yeah. Well, I can start with that I am currently married to my partner, Casey. I have two beautiful girls. They are 10 and 11. I am living in California, which is where I grew up. Spent some time away from California, moved to Texas for a bit, moved to Vegas for a bit. That's how I met Miss Mary Grace. And now I'm back where I want to be. But my story is kind of, I guess it would be one that would probably be like, oh, I wouldn't have even imagined that you went through all of that. Because I am a very positive person and I have always tried to look at, the brighter side of things. So growing up, I was your typical ADHD crazy child. My teacher had to record me for a whole entire day to prove to my mom that I needed help. And
She
back then in the
recorded
90s,
you. You
yes.
cannot do that nowadays. People are like, you don't have permission to do that.
She put one of those big fancy camcorders right by my desk and was like, watch this VHS. She gave my mom a VHS tape, made my mom watch the
She's like,
tape
here's
of
the
how
tape.
psych. Yeah, so I'm just like, so
Oh.
I was medicated from age 7 to 14. Well, I found out, and I'm going to jump all over the place because that's how I do this best. I found out later that my ADHD might have also been intensified by anxiety. And nobody would have thought of that back then because nobody knew what I was going through until age 11. So, a little bit deeper, darker side here is that from age 2 to age 11, I was molested by my father. And it happened as often as it could have happened. I went with him like every weekend, every other weekend, and it was a consistent thing. So I remember like telling my mom, I don't want to go there. I remember crying, like, don't take me there. But I would never say why because my father, he was a charmer, you could say. Like, he had a great personality. He was very helpful. Him and my mom were best friends. So I didn't feel like I could tell anybody about that. That all finally came out when I was 14. And it was chaos, drama. I got off my ADHD medicine. All the craziness came out about my dad. So I was ditching school. I had all D's and F's in all my classes. And my mom had this new boyfriend who was super cool, right? For a moment. He was really cool. And I went through the typical teenager stuff, ditching school, getting in trouble, going to suspension, all of that. And then my mom's boyfriend, like, kind of like took me in, was like, oh, let me show you how to be like, you don't need a man and fuck F your dad. Excuse my language. I don't know if
You're
I
good.
cuss.
Girl, you could cuss here.
Your dad. And he was like super chill. I mean, dude taught me how to change the tire, taught me how to do taught me how to like install sprinklers. So a lot of my self-sufficiency, unfortunately, I can thank him. And the reason I say that is because by the time I turned 15, I had a 3-year break from 11. Oh no, 4 years. Can't do math. A 4-year break from like 11 to 15 where I wasn't being abused. Then when I turned 15, I don't know if he had like a weird crush on me, but it started to become very emotionally and verbally abusive. So he was calling me a bitch. He was calling me a slut. He was calling me fat. I had a boyfriend at the time that he was always calling a loser and a waste of space to his face. And then he would send me to go for runs and I would go for the run. Okay. I'd go for the run because he told me I had to go running. And then I would come back and he'd be like, so who'd you fuck? Who'd you have sex with?
Oh my gosh.
And he would take my door from my bedroom. I remember I had to wear baggy clothes in high school because I got boobs. Okay. I got boobs and I got ass and I've had it since I was 14. All right. And so I would have to wear baggy clothes and all the kids at school that I was pregnant. And so I would tell my mom these things and he would be like, oh, well, they only think you're pregnant because you're a slut. So it was just like a never ending like battle that I was going through all the time. My family, the rest of my family hated him. And it was just like a lot of chaos growing up from those two. So at 18, I was very sheltered because besides these two men abusing me, I wasn't allowed to really do anything. I was allowed to go to school and come home, go to school and come home. I did have friends, but I was only allowed at their house. And it was just like, I was very naive. So at 18, I went crazy. I moved out of my mom's house very proudly, like, I'm leaving.
Bye.
Okay, I will figure it out. I lived in my friend's garage. that's where I lived. And I didn't care because it was my space where I could have a door and I had my stuff. Nobody was screaming at me and nobody was touching me and nobody was bothering me. And it was my, like, I want to say that was probably the happiest I had ever been up until that point because it was mine and nobody could take it from me. So I lived in the garage for 6 months.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted to rewind because you said you went crazy, but I feel like, no, you stepped into your power and did something for you.
I did, but I also still went crazy. So I developed a drinking problem at 18. So I did go down that stereotypical thing where you just kind of want to forget everything and just, yeah, nobody can mess with me. So I didn't have a drinking problem. I didn't know how to stop. I didn't know when to stop. I got involved in a lot of like situations where I'm lucky to be alive. I got involved with like party crews and getting involved in shootings. And I didn't shoot any guns though, not me. But I've had guns shot at me.
Oh, wow.
And it was very intense. And it wasn't until I met my ex that I kind of got out of all of that. And I know I'm talking on and on here because I've been through a lot, but he came in and he kind of took me away from everything. So I thought, wow, he's so great, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I had this sinking feeling in my gut. And if I could tell you anything, listen to your freaking gut feeling, because I had this feeling in my gut that he was no good. And I was fighting myself like, no, like, dude is awesome. He's patient. He's dealing with my alcoholness craziness. And he still wants to like help me and take care of me. So fast forward, I ended up having children. I got married, moved to Texas, hated Texas, moved to Vegas. And I feel like when I came to Vegas, that's kind of when everything started to go sour again. My ex at the time was becoming very verbally abusive to me. And because of my history, I thought that was okay. I thought just because he wasn't hitting me, that him calling me names was fine because my mom's boyfriend did it. And, my dad did worse things to me. So I was always comparing my past to what I currently had. So, it's not as bad as it was when I was a teen, when I was a kid. So I guess I can deal with it. I guess I can handle it. And, the cheating got involved and I was taken away from like all my friends in a sense, and even my family, because I was convinced that nobody liked me, that I was too loud. These were the things that I was told on a daily basis. You're too loud. You're too crazy. You're a mess. Not even your mom wants to deal with you. Just all kinds of gaslighting.
Your ex-husband was saying this.
Yeah. This was all my ex-husband. And I believed it because, he took me away from home and included me. And, I didn't know anything else. So I was told this every single day for like a couple of years. And then one day he just decided that he didn't want to be with me anymore. He said, I'm done. You're a waste of space. You're never going to amount to anything. Mind you, I'm working 3 jobs, okay, trying to take care of my 2 kids by myself, taking them to doctor's appointments, making sure they have their clothes, making sure they have their shoes, that I ended up working in a daycare just so that I can make sure that somebody would take care of them while I was at work. And then also, daycare is expensive. Yeah. Okay, even like years ago, daycare was expensive. And it was just a really hard life for me. Like, it was a really hard time. And I just thought, well, it's better than what it used to be. And so I thought that I had to put up with that. I thought that's just life. People abuse you and that's it. So I always just made my best out of it. I always made sure that I was great at work and that I was learning and that I was growing and that I would always just put myself and my girls first. So when he said he was like done with me because I was a waste of space and I was never going to amount to anything, a part of me was like upset because I'm like, the fuck? I just fucking sacrificed my entire fucking life for you and you're just going to throw me away. But then the other part of me was like, oh, wait, does this mean I'm free? Wait a second. Does this mean like I'm going to deal with this anymore? And I can be like my own person now? So it was a very like upsetting and confusing and weird time. And this was June of 2017. So I just caught you up through 27 years of abuse that I've been through. And 2 months later, he decides that he wants to be with me again.
Oh.
But at this point, I'm like, no, I'm free. Like, you live in a different room. I live in this room. I'm doing what I want. And I feel I'm doing the same thing basically, but with a lot less stress and a lot less abuse. And I was like, no, I like this. I'm cool with this. So he takes one of those food trays and he fucking throws it at me. And I remember it hit me really hard in my arm. And I was like, I'm like, what happened? And so I panicked and I go and I run into my closet. Okay. I run into my closet because I don't know any better at this point in my life. And he follows me into the closet and he's screaming at me and he's yelling at me and he's telling me to get my shit out of the house and he's going to throw all my belongings in the street and he doesn't give a fuck and just like totally just terrified me. So it was in that moment I was like, no, I'm done. I will never love this man again. I will never be with this man again. And I'm going to do everything that I can to get the F away from him. So then, funny story, 2 weeks later, I meet my spouse. Didn't know it was going to be my spouse. Okay, it was supposed to be a one-night stand. I'll be honest. That's what it started off as. And I just remember I was at my divorce. I'm like, I'm getting a divorce. Yeah, I'm going to be single. And I was like, ooh, hi. You're cute. And I go over and I like smack their butt. And I was just like, and then I like run to the bathroom. And then I come back out of the bathroom, I smack their butt again. And then I go run back away. But they come up to me and they're like talking to me and they're like, oh, because if you don't know this, when my spouse and I met, they didn't speak any English.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And I'm fluent in Spanish. So it was about a year of, okay, yes, okay, this is what I'm saying. And like using the Google Translate. Yes. So that was great, right? I'm like, oh, wow, I met somebody. Totally the wrong time to meet somebody because I'm still legally married, even though we're separated. I just went through all this drama. But the thing is, like, I don't know why my brain is this way, but if I decide that I don't love somebody anymore or I don't want something anymore, my brain is very like, no, we've decided. And I'm very thankful to have that feature in my head. So fast forward a little bit more. Now we're in September because that was August. September 2nd was when we met. And then, my ex and I were getting along. He's like, I'm so sorry the way I treated you. You're right. We don't belong together. It's better that we do separate. And I'm thinking, wow, like, where did this person come from? I'm happy. Like, okay, cool. We're on the same page. We're just going to co-parent. We're going to live together until our lease expires. That'll give me enough time to save money to get out. And that'll give him enough time, to do whatever he needs to do. I don't freaking care. But I was just worried about me at this point. So I'm thinking we're getting along. We're friends. Wrong idea for me to think that way. He and I had an open relationship previously in our marriage. So I've always been very open about my life. It was 3 weeks after we had met, Casey and I, and Casey's my spouse. Casey and I had met that I was like, oh, I'm just going to tell him because him and I are homies. Like, we were cool. I mean, we were getting along for the most part. Now that I'm looking back at it, we were not cool. We were not getting along for the most part. But that's just what I needed to tell myself to survive. I needed to tell myself everything was fine. So I told him about, Casey and he flipped his shit. Like, he flipped his shit. He started getting upset. He starts pulling out like our photo albums, telling me about like just crying that he wants me back. And I'm like, no, I decided last month when you threw a freaking table thing at me that I'm not doing ever. Like, I don't get what you don't understand here. So it escalated. He ended up choking me that night. And it was like one of these kind, like this. So I couldn't breathe. I literally had had my mom's ex-boyfriend pop up in my head in that moment and tell me, when somebody puts you in a chokehold, they're going to do one of two things. They're going to do it correctly, and you're going to go to sleep for a little bit, or they're going to do it wrong and they're going to kill you. And that's the two outcomes. And so I'm thinking in my head, while I'm being like freaking choked like this, my kids can't wake up to not have a mom. Mm-hmm. So I just pretended. I just went limp and I pretended that he put me to sleep or something. And as soon as I stopped fighting him and I let my entire body go limp, he let me go. And as soon as he let me go, I just remember being like, and like taking this deep freaking breath in. And like, I just remember being like, don't react. Don't scream. Don't yell. Just keep your cool. Like, that's what I told myself in my head. Do not react. Because if you scream and you yell, he's going to come at you again. So I remember like wiping my mouth and I had blood all over my mouth. And I was like, did he break something in my throat? I have no idea. So I'm like wiping my mouth. I'm looking at my hands and I'm just like, don't react. Don't react. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. And he's like crying and telling me, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I'm like, it's fine. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Because I knew in that moment that I had to be the calm one in order to get out of that situation. Right. And so I go to the bathroom. I wash my hands and I'm thinking, okay, how the fuck do I get away from this motherfucker? Because I am terrified. I do not want to go to sleep with him. I do not want to be in this house with him. I want him out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I grab my phone and he's like, what are you doing? Calling the cops? I'm like, dude, chill. Like, I'm just going on Facebook. And I made like a face like that. Like, I'm really trying to sell it here. I'm like, what is wrong with you, homie? You're tripping. Like I'm being gaslighter, right? Because I'm like, dude, calm the hell down. So I end up having to coddle this fucking man. Like, it's okay. It's all right. I know you didn't mean it. It's okay. And I'm on Facebook making a post basically saying, call the police. Here's my address. This is not a fucking joke. Do not call me. Do not message me. Call the police and send them here, like immediately.
Oh my God.
Like, do this. I'm not kidding.
Mm-hmm.
And I get one idiot that messages me. Who is that? Who's messaging you? I'm like, I don't know. Somebody just sent me one of those like angel flower things, you know, the ones where they send you the prayers. And he's like, oh, okay. And so at this time, Facebook actually had the thing where you could play a video at the same time you're posting. Mm-hmm. So I had the video playing and I'm like, and I'm doing that. It took an hour for them to come, Mary Grace. An hour for the police to come.
Oh my gosh.
And I found out later 7 people called for me. And I go to open the door and the police go, you look fine. I don't see any marks on you. Are you really hurt? But, and I told them what happened. And they're like, oh. And I was like, well, here's the part that I missed. I said he was trying to kill himself. He had a knife out of his throat and I was trying to help him. And it turned into him choking me out. And they're like, well, your neck looks fine. I don't see any marks. But he tried to kill himself? Oh, well, if he tried to kill himself, then we can go ahead and take him away for 72 hours. And I'm like, okay, so freaking take him away for the 72 hours. Like, I don't care. And so then he's behind me crying on the couch. And he's like, no, I did it. I did it. So guess what they do if you hurt somebody else? They give you 12 hours. So 72 if he tried to do it to himself, but only 12 because he tried to do something to me.
Wow.
Yeah. That's how our system works. So in those 12 hours, I got all his stuff out of the house. I went and got a restraining order and I kicked him out. And I went to my leasing office and I showed them the police report. I showed them the restraining order and they backed me up and they also removed him from the lease. So here I'm thinking, okay, now the state of Nevada is going to protect me, right? They're going to protect me. Well, they denied my restraining order because I wasn't afraid of him enough. Yeah. So the moment they deny my restraining order, guess who comes back?
Yep, he comes back.
Yeah. So luckily, I had already gotten him off the lease, so he couldn't move back in. But he was coming to my office. He was bringing me gifts and flowers. And I'm like, I don't want this. Like, what the, do you not remember the things that you just did to me? Like, are you kidding right now? So then it gets worse, and he does end up coming back again. He ends up kidnapping me. And what I mean by that is he tells me he has to go to work, and he brings the girls. Of course, I'm going to take my children. They're my children. And he's in the car telling me all these things. And I'm like, okay, we're not getting back together. I don't get what you don't understand. That's not happening. Now, if you need to go to work, give me my kids. Well, he ends up following me to the house because he's like, oh, I don't have to go to work. I'm like, okay, well, you stay here with the girls and I'll go get your stuff that you're asking for. He follows me in. I turn around and I just remember screaming because I'm like, oh my God, he's in the house. He tackles me and he ties me up from head to toe. I'm talking zip ties and rope and duct tape. Because apparently, dude thought I was Houdini and thought I was going to get out of it somehow. And
Where were your
I remember
daughters?
him in the car,
Oh my God.
waiting in the car at like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night in a Las Vegas apartment complex. Yeah, that's where they were. And yeah, head to toe, all the way up. I remember him telling me he took my phone. He said, you're not pulling that one on me again. Takes my phone away from me and then tells me if I move or if I make a noise, he will get to me before anybody else will. So at this moment, I'm thinking he's going to kill me, right? I mean, that's what you think if somebody tells you something like that. So he does all that, gets me all tied up, gets all of that happening. I'm on the floor of my apartment, scared to death. And he goes back to the car and he brings my children to the house. And he goes and puts them in the room and shuts the door. And then he comes back to me. And it's just like him talking at me for hours, just talking at me, and then takes my phone and demands that I unlock it, unlocks my phone, starts going through all my photos. Mind you, I met my spouse, right? We were talking. So we had pictures together. He's going through deleting all the pictures. You're never going to see this person again. This is my family. And just, this goes on for hours. He forced himself on me a couple of times because he had a knife. What am I supposed to do? You know? And I just remember being like, I have to get out of this and I have to get out of this alive and I have to be calm again. I'm not allowed to react. I'm not allowed to cry. I'm not allowed to scream. I'm not allowed to be afraid in this moment. Like, I'm not. So I ended up being able to talk him out of it. And it wasn't until like 16 hours later that I convinced him to leave. Oh, everything's fine. Yes, we're back together. Everything's fine. Yes, I'm so sorry that I called the police. You're right. I'm wrong. And then as soon as he left, the first person I called was my mom. Not even the police. I don't know why. The first person I called was my mom. And my mom's like, Brittany, call the cops. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Because I just turned it all off. I turned off all emotion. I had to. And I get him to confess over the phone with a detective hearing it. And that is how I got in jail. But the thing is that even though I went through all that, a lot of women go through that, right? A lot of women have been through domestic violence and they don't tell you. Everybody tells you, get away from it, get out of it, get out of it, get out of it. You know, you don't deserve that. But what a lot of people don't realize is how hard it is afterwards, after you get out of that, especially if that person was your sole provider, especially if that person paid the bills. You know, I lost my apartment. I lost my cars. I had to throw everything into a storage unit that I could barely afford. I had to live with people. Like, we almost went to a shelter, my girls and I. Like, I have a full-time job and I'm telling people at work, I'm going to have to go live in a shelter because we lost our apartment because I can't afford to pay the $900 a month because I only make $8 an hour. So this was 2017. I made $8 an hour. So I'm like, and luckily my mom was like, oh, you could live with us for a month So I lived with her for a month, lived with somebody else for a month. And then I lived with somebody else for 3 months until I finally got an apartment. But like all the crap you have to go through, one, you're grieving. Two, you're like, your entire life just flipped upside down. Three, I lost everything. His family took my cars. They could have left me and my kids with cars. They could have, but they chose not to. They were like, no, we want the cars because it's in his name. It wasn't in my name. It was in his name and his mom's name. And because of that, they legally took the cars away from me. And I didn't know. I was naive. Like, I was so naive. So yeah, that was a lot to go through. And that was all 2017. That all happened to me. It was 7 years ago, but it doesn't feel like it sometimes. So from there, I kind of just he ended up going to prison, and I ended up having 2 girls that I had to take care of by myself. And I'm in Las Vegas where I don't have any family, and I have a job where I only make $8 an hour. And I just had to figure it out. And luckily, my spouse stepped in too. I mean, they didn't have to. They could have been like, whoa, this is too much. Oh, good luck and see you later. But they didn't. They were supposed to move back to Mexico, and they ended up staying. And they helped me. Like, they did. They helped me with everything that they could. And we've had our ups and downs as a couple, but we've been going strong ever since. I mean, we're still together today. And they're still helping me with everything that I have going on today. And yeah, that's kind of my personal journey there. Haven't been abused since I was 27. I could happily say that. And I know that was really a lot. But since then, I mean, I just hustled, I knew that the job that I had worked for the moment that I needed it. So I knew that I needed daycare, and I couldn't afford daycare. That's why I worked in a daycare. When you compare things like that, I always looked at the bigger picture, and I was always willing to be miserable for a little bit of time if it meant that I was going to be successful later on. So in the daycare, I learned office skills. I learned event planning. I learned how to manage people. I was the star coordinator. I was writing folders, and corporate was recognizing me. They were like, oh, it's Britney with her little backpack, because I was always wearing a little backpack. But I paid attention. That's my point. Like, yes, I was going through all this crap in the background, but every single job that I had since I was like 18, I paid attention. Pay attention to who was in charge, what they were doing to be in charge, and I paid attention to their mistakes, how I would do things differently. And so after I left the daycare and all the drama that came with that place, I mean, those women were not kind. They basically told me to leave my PTSD at the door, kind of women. They're like, nobody gives a fuck what you went through. Get the fuck over it. Boo-hoo, cry me a river. It's like, these were the kind of toxic environments that I was in. And these were the messages that I was being sent. And I was like, this. I would never treat somebody this way. So there has to be better people out there that wouldn't treat me this way. And so I searched for a job. My girls are finally both in school. And I got into the insurance industry. And that industry, was my stepping stone into who I am right now. And that is because I finally realized, I had to go through a lot with that industry as well. A lot. But I learned that I had value. I learned that I had worth. And I learned that I was smart. I was like, oh, I'm not an idiot. Oh, I do have good ideas. And from there, I actually found my love of Monday.com because it's a platform we used. And I knew that I liked marketing, but now I knew that I loved marketing. And those were just 2 of the things that I got to do there. So I was in that industry for 3.5 years. I did a lot of growing there, and I did a lot of paying attention. I was paying attention to how things work. I was paying attention to, how a business runs, and just really absorbing it and soaking it in and thinking, how can I make this my own, or how can I do this myself? And I was fired from that job, which is funny because it's the second job I was ever fired from. Every other job I left, and I was begged to stay. So it was interesting to be fired again for the second time. But I was fired with grace, Mary Grace. I was. I was told, you're a gem. This is just not the industry for you. and I'm not worried about you. You are going to go far in life. And I was like, but I'm fired. How am I going to pay my bills? I'm fired. You know, it was what I needed to hear, because after I cried for an hour, I was like, okay, you know what? I've been through worse. I've been through worse and I made it through, and I'm going to fucking do it. And thanks to networking, because it's not just something that you say, it truly is something important. Thanks to networking and listening to my gut, finally, I had met the right people. And so I called one of those right people, Miss Sonia Lamas. You know her. I called her and I said, I just got fired from my job. I know we barely know each other, but I'm panicking. Can you help me?
Mhm.
And she's like, yes, I can.
Wow.
I actually know somebody that I could hook you up with. And within 4 hours of getting fired, I found a new job. 4 hours.
Yes. Yes.
I was like, okay, cool. And it was marketing. It was a marketing job. So I was finally able to be like, really truly find my spirit in marketing. And I even organized this company with Monday.com. So I was doing the two things that I loved most, and I was finally putting it into work. And I was like, okay, I could do this, because I thought I could only do it for that one industry, because I only understood that one industry. No, these talents can be translated into other industries. It's literally the same thing no matter what industry you go in. Everybody has leads, everybody has sales, everybody needs to track their ROIs, everybody needs marketing. It's just sometimes you got to change the lingo. It's all the same. So I like exploded with her. I didn't make a lot of money. 2023 was a better year than 2022. And that is all that I compare it to. I'm not somebody that came out the gate and was like, I have $10,000 months. I did not. I had $3,000 months. I had $4,000 months. I had $1,800 months.
Mhm.
But the point is that I was doing it for myself. I was able to make my own choices. Nobody was telling me what to do. Nobody was holding me back. And I no longer had all these negative people around me telling me that I wasn't good enough, because I was good enough.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm like, that's just kind of the awakening I had in 2023. Like, I am good enough. Like, it took a long time for me to unlearn a lot of these things that I was told from ages 2 to 27, that I was unworthy, that I was worthless, that I would never amount to anything. And those thoughts still creep up here at 34. They do. But I know from firsthand experience that I am worthy, that I can do it, and thus can do it.
Yes.
Yes.
You are a
And
badass, Brittany. I'm just listening to your story. I haven't, I'm taking it all in. And what I can say is, I don't know how you did it. Like, I'm trying to, hear the story, and I'm embracing it and absorbing it. I don't know how, like, the way you maneuvered, like when he choked you and then you were like calm, and you're like, okay, I got to be the calm person in this because he's obviously not calm. And then when he kidnapped you, and then you pretty much, you had the mental capacity and the expertise within you to know that, okay, he's this, so I need to be this, and this is how I'm going to get out. What came onto you? Like, what was going on to your head? Like, obviously we know survival mode, right? Like, those things like come on for you, but I want to know from you, what was coming on to you? Like, what was that?
for me, it's just like, I need to be here. That is my thing. I need to be here. And if I have to turn off the emotion, I will. And I don't know how to explain that, because I've had to turn off emotion a lot,
Mhm.
especially when I was young, dealing with what I dealt with my father. I had to turn off emotion. So it's like this little switch that I just have to turn off, and I have to bring out the logic. And that's all I can look at, is the logic behind it. What is logically correct in this moment, and what's going to logically get me to the next step. And that is kind of, I think, my root, is just looking at the logic of things.
So, for any woman who's maybe going through that currently, what is some advice you can give them? Because obviously when you're in it, it's not easy, and it's easier said than done to say to get out, to leave, to escape, whatever. But from you, what would be that advice you'd give?
My advice would be that this one is hard because this is the advice that I kind of gave to myself. So I don't know if it would work for everybody, but it was, do you want to live like this forever? Like, is this how you want your life to be? Do you want to wake up at 80 years old and still have to deal with this bullshit?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you want? And my answer was no. Like, do you want to deal with this next week? No. Do you want to deal with this next month? No. Do you want to deal with this tomorrow in the next 5 minutes? No, I don't want to deal with this. That's how you have to get out. And yes, it's hard. And yes, it's scary. And yes, it doesn't always pan out the right way. And there are some horror stories that I have from other women being in group therapy. But at the end of the day, it's like, I don't want to live like this. I know there's something better. And plus, I have 2 little girls looking at me, and God forbid they ever have to deal with somebody like this. I want them to be able to be like, my mom didn't deal with this, and neither am I.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like I have to be that role model for them. But even if I didn't have kids, it would fall back on, do I really want to live like this? Like, no, I don't.
Wow. That just perked something in me. It didn't trigger me, so I don't want to say the word trigger, is because I don't share this often. I think I've shared it with you before, that my mom was in a domestic violence relationship with my father. And one of the things I took away, so I hope that'll help you with 2 daughters, is when I was a preteen and teenager, dating and whatnot, because I saw my mom leave that relationship. For me, any relationship I went into, I mean, in quotation, relationship as a preteen, like, whatever. But, sometimes that's where it starts, right? At that age. I just remember being so fucking adamant that like no one will fucking tell me what to do, because I saw that modeled in my mom. I saw that where she, had the bravery and put the resources together to leave. That for me as I was 8 years old, to see all of that from born to 8 years old, leaving as a preteen, I just always had that in me. Like, no one's going to fucking tell me what to do. No one's going to tell me how to dress. No one's going to tell me that I can't go here. And I just kind of had an innately in myself to know how to look for those signs because it was modeled for me. And I just want to tell you, as a mother, your daughters see that, and it's going to put something in them because it puts some fucking fire in me. And, thank God I am with the most amazing man who treats me like a queen. But even before him, those were the things I always looked for, like those signs, those things that, and granted, you can't always pinpoint those signs, but because I was immersed in it at such a young age, I was able to kind of like, okay, is he a little like controlling in regards to like what I'm wearing or little things that they would say type of thing. And I was just like, I had a wall too, but it was more of like, no, fuck that. No one's going to tell me what to do, man or woman. And that was like in me. So I just want to share that with you, that you're doing that for your beautiful daughters, is that they're going to have that badassery in them of like, no, no, we ain't doing that. You're not telling me that. Any gender, no matter who you are, no matter what title you hold. And I believe that's why I'm saying it wasn't a trigger, but something innate in me when you shared all of this, is that I believe that's why I'm able to also stand my ground, is like, no one's going to fuck with me, because I've seen that. It was modeled as a child for me.
Yes. Good. I love that. No, I'm glad. The girls and I, we have quizzes too. I'll be like, what happens if somebody does this, this, and this? What are you going to say? And they'll tell me, don't talk to me like that. I'm like,
that is so adorable. I love that.
I was like, because I love my mom, and I don't want anything to come off like, what was my mom doing? Why wasn't she protecting me more? My mom was doing the best that she could with what she knew.
All of our parents were doing the best that they could with the tools and the resources that they knew at the time.
Yeah, she's a great mom. She helps me. She's like, let me take my grandbabies for the weekend. And I'm like, yes, please.
Yeah. I just believe, it goes back to our story. It goes back to our experience and what has built us to who we are today, because when I mentioned how you were resourceful and something just came onto you that you wanted to be here, like, it ain't happening. I ain't dying today. This ain't happening. I'm not waking up tomorrow and the same shit's going to happen tomorrow or 2 weeks or 80 years old. It's something that reflects in your business as a business woman, because when you were, in quotation, fired, because I feel like that was a graceful let go. You were like, no, I'm not, this ain't going to happen. Like, tomorrow I ain't going to wake up with no income. And so something in you triggered of like, I'm going to be resourceful. I'm going to find what that is. And even throughout your business, as your business journey, I still see you doing that personally. I still see you being resourceful to other people, being resourceful to yourself and making it happen. And I truly believe it. It's that mindset of, that ain't happening to me. And I ain't staying here, and this ain't gonna be, doesn't matter what exterior or whatever is happening in my life, I'm gonna change that. I'm gonna be in control of how this is gonna go.
Yes, I have been called a control freak, but I think it's served me well.
Yes, I believe so. I think there's a difference with being control and also knowing what you want and how you see your life, how you see that dream life for yourself. I don't see that as a control. I see that that's what I want, and I know what I want, and I don't want this, so I ain't going over here. This ain't happening. Britney, what would you tell yourself as an Ateh to yourself when you were younger? What would you tell Britney?
I would tell Britney to listen to your gut. 100%. First and foremost, the moment you have a bad feeling, listen to it, because there were so many times where I didn't listen to my gut and I was like, I knew I shouldn't have, or I knew I should have done this differently, but I questioned myself. So I would just tell myself that, listen to your gut, and that's it. Yeah.
I feel you on that, because I've had those same feelings where I'm like, well, I don't think I should do that, or something doesn't seem right. And then I still went with it because I tried to give it a benefit of a doubt, or just like, okay, well, it seems okay on the exterior, but just something's not sitting well with me, and I'll still go with it. And then at the end of the day, it was like, not right. I'm like, shit, I should have fucking listened to my gut. But, do you agree that a lot of those things that we've gone through, whether it was wrong or right, that it has built something in you today? Like, there was growth, expansion, and something you needed to learn from it?
Yes, I do. I think those experiences actually cemented that I can trust my instinct, that I can trust my gut, because it was almost like I knew something was up, and then I proved that something was up, and I was like, okay, so I do have good instincts. I can read people, because that's another thing that I have. If I have a feeling about somebody, I'm like, no. And it might take 6 months, might take a year, but it comes out, and I'm like, told you. I told, who did I tell? I told all of you. I told you. Just saying. So it did reinforce that for me, that yes, I can listen to myself. I can listen to my gut. I can trust my own instincts. And as long as I keep doing that, I know that I'm going to succeed, because I am a reflector. I'm a deep reflector. They say people with ADHD are impulsive, and yes, we can be impulsive, but it's not really impulsive though, because we're constantly thinking about it. Constantly. I could be thinking about the same thing for 2 or 3 weeks before I say something, and it might be impulsive to you, but I've actually been thinking about it for a while. It's just all been in my head.
Yes. Same. It could feel like, oh, that came out of nowhere. No, I've been thinking about it for freaking straight 2 weeks, literally 24 hours a day. I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about it.
Putting out all the scenarios. Well, if I do this, this will happen, and that will happen, and that will happen. But if I do this, well, okay, that one maybe. Okay, let me think about it.
I love it. I just thank you for being real. Thank you for sharing your story today. My last question, because I always got to have another question, is what is next for you in business or in life? Anything?
So what's next for me is I'm trying to bring my family into my business. So I am growing. I am bringing on more
Mhm.
clients, but I'm trying to obviously not overwork myself and trying to learn from the very smart women around me that are like, delegate, delegate, delegate.
Yep.
And so that's kind of where I'm at right now, learning how to delegate and learning how to grow. Because I'm growing. I'm going to be taking on more. And I hired my mom as my CFO, which is very exciting for me
Oh, that's awesome.
because it's my mom.
Yeah.
She's like the smartest person I know with money. And aside from that, my spouse is helping more of the business too. But my goal is to employ all three of us full time, and then vacation when we want to, travel when we want to. But for right now, it's going to be that'll be like the next step.
Ah, that is awesome. I love it. Okay, I lie. I have one more question. So, for the woman who's listening today, because you're her ate, what would you like them to take away from this episode, from your story?
Yeah. So I would like you to take away that you have a lot more power than you think you do. And I know everybody says the same thing, right? Oh my God, you have more power. But no, really, you do. Like, once you open your eyes and you see that the world really can cater to you, I know it's hard. I know there's obstacles. I know that it can feel defeating. And sometimes at the end of the day, you just want to cry yourself to sleep, because I do it. I do it too. But you have power. You can do anything you set your mind to, as corny as it sounds. If you want to start that business, start the freaking business, girl. If you want to start a podcast, start the podcast. There's always going to be excuses of it costs too much money. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough skill. Well, guess what? Skills can be learned, time can be managed, and money can be earned. So do your damn thing.
Ooh, that is so good. We're going to close it out with that. And make sure that you check out the description and connect with Britney. She is an amazing person, friend, business, sister. It does not matter. This woman here is someone that I absolutely adore. She makes me laugh. We can be on a call and I'm like talking about business and then all of a sudden talking about this and talking about that. But I just believe that when you have a circle and a network, that's how it should be, right? We shouldn't just be talking about business all the time. It's about life and how we're all doing it together and rising together. So, again, thank you so much, Britney, for sharing your story today. And thank you to you, whoever is listening, for tuning in. And we will see you next time. Bye.